Tonight's lecture by Mr. Donovan is one of a series of lectures by famous diplomats throughout Hong Kong. The distinguished guests represent mainland China, the United States, Germany, France, Italy, Korea, Japan, and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I would like to now invite Professor Lawrence Lau, President of the Chinese University of Hong Kong, to give his welcoming address. Mr. Lau.
Consul General Donovan, Mrs. Donovan, distinguished guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon to you all, and welcome to the Chinese University of Hong Kong. Today, we are most honored to have with us as our distinguished speaker, Mr. Joseph Donovan, the U.S. Consul General in Hong Kong and Macau, I believe, right? Yeah. And the title of his talk is Hong Kong's Success is Important to the United States. We're extremely grateful to him for coming to our campus to deliver his first public lecture, major public speech here, barely 3 months after his arrival in Hong Kong. I was joking with Glenn Shive just right before that we have now a tradition of the U.S. Consul General coming here to give major lectures, and the Consul General Donovan is the third one. I think his predecessor, 2 times removed, Mr. James Keefe came and gave a talk, and then also Mr. James Cunningham gave a talk. And I said, well, maybe the Consul General is not accredited until he or she gives a talk at the Chinese University. So we are very grateful to you, sir, for coming here today. Born and raised in New York, Mr. Donovan graduated from Georgetown University with a bachelor's degree in foreign service. He earned his master's degree in national security affairs from the United States Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California. Mr. Donovan first joined the U.S. Department of State in the 1970s and has spent much of his diplomatic career in East Asia, where he gained extensive experience in multilateral diplomacy. His early assignments include Chief of the Political Section at the American Institute in Taiwan, Deputy Political Counselor and Chief of the Political Military Affairs Unit at the U.S. Embassy in Tokyo, Deputy Head of the Political Section at the U.S. Embassy in Beijing, and Branch Chief of the American Institute in Taiwan's Kaohsiung office. Mr. Donovan also served at the U.S. embassies in Seoul and in Doha. 5 years ago, he was appointed Director for the Office of Chinese and Mongolian Affairs in the Bureau of East Asia and Pacific Affairs at the U.S. Department of State. In 2005, he was posted to Tokyo as the Deputy Chief of Mission at the U.S. Embassy there. Mr. Donovan took up his current appointment as Consul General of the United States of America in Hong Kong and Macau last August. A veteran diplomat and an expert in East Asian affairs, Mr. Donovan has spent much of his career working on U.S. relations with South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, and mainland China. We are very privileged indeed to have him here today to speak to us on the importance of Hong Kong's success to the United States. And I'm sure all of you in the audience also have lots of questions about the President-elect of the United States, Mr. Obama. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you can't wait to be inspired by Mr. Donovan's insights and rich experience. Please join me in warmly welcoming Consul General Joseph Donovan.
Thank you very much, Vice Chancellor Lau, honored guests, faculty, students, and colleagues. Before I begin, I would just like to say when I hear an introduction like that, I feel that maybe my time is already over and that this is more of an obituary than anything else. But I do thank you, Larry, for those very, very kind words. It's an honor to speak at the Chinese University of Hong Kong's Diplomat Series, given your institution's very distinguished 40-year-plus mission of bringing together China and the West. You've certainly helped to bring Hong Kong and the United States together. Over the years, your bilingual and multicultural programs have educated more than 3,000 American students and sent at least 500 Hong Kong students to the United States to supplement their education. And as I just learned in a briefing a few minutes ago, these programs, if anything, are increasing dramatically as you move ahead on a very, very ambitious plan of exchanges. And I certainly would like to congratulate you on your many accomplishments in this area. But there is more to be done, and your mission today is more important than ever before. We face today a global financial crisis of unprecedented proportions. The British historian Arnold Toynbee once wrote that the measure of a civilization is its ability to overcome major challenges. The biggest challenge of our time may well be to restore the health of the world economy. Failure to do so will diminish our ability to deal with a host of other pressing issues, including climate change, global terrorism, poverty alleviation, and pandemic disease. For our part, the United States has undertaken extraordinary steps to provide liquidity, strengthen financial institutions, protect depositors, and enforce investor protections. Now, faced with this very daunting challenge, as well as conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan, people often ask me if Hong Kong still matters to the United States. My answer is yes. What makes Hong Kong important to the United States? It's a combination of factors, really. And these factors are also the key to Hong Kong's well-deserved reputation as a vibrant and dynamic open society. Hong Kong's commitment to free markets, its free press, its independent judiciary, and its respect for individual and human rights makes Hong Kong's continued success important to the United States. Let me use the financial crisis as one example of the critical role Hong Kong plays in the region and in our thinking about Asia. As this crisis unfolded, the U.S. government recognized that we needed to explain to Asian audiences what steps the United States had taken and why. Hong Kong was a logical venue to do so. As the second largest financial market in Asia, Hong Kong has an important stake in restoring global financial and economic stability. Now, during a very short visit here, Treasury Undersecretary David McCormick was able to make a major public address, conduct a series of television and print interviews with media representatives who asked tough and informed questions and whose stories were quickly and accurately disseminated throughout the region. In addition, Undersecretary McCormick consulted with Hong Kong government's world-class financial experts who were already playing an important role in the crisis through Hong Kong's membership in the Financial Stability Forum. Now, if you're not acquainted with it, the Financial Stability Forum is a group of major national financial authorities whose purpose is to promote international financial stability. But Hong Kong is important not only in times of crisis. Hong Kong is also a great place for Americans to live and to do business. Actions speak louder than words, so let me cite just a few statistics. More than 60,000 U.S. citizens currently call Hong Kong home, and we estimate that 1 million more Americans visit here each year. Hong Kong is the United States' 14th largest export market for goods and services. This year, Hong Kong will import some 1.2 billion US dollars worth of US food products, making Hong Kong our 7th largest food products market and our 3rd fastest growing market for food and beverages. US investment in Hong Kong totals about 47 billion US dollars. Some 1,100 US firms are registered here, and they employ approximately 10% of Hong Kong's total workforce. In turn, Hong Kong companies currently hold about $3.2 billion in US of investments in the United States. So Hong Kong's continued economic success means jobs for Americans and contributes to Americans' economic prosperity. And that continued economic success hinges on a reliance on a market economy combined with fair and transparent government regulation and respect for individual rights. In another area, Hong Kong's independent judiciary and its reliance on a rule of law facilitates U.S. cooperation with Hong Kong to combat global terrorism and transnational crime. In the fight against terrorism, the Hong Kong police worked closely with the United States Consulate General's staff during the 2008 Olympics and Paralympics to ensure the safety of visitors to the Hong Kong-hosted equestrian events here, and also the safety of the visiting U.S. equestrian delegation. Our Department of Homeland Security works closely with Hong Kong Customs and Excise Department to ensure the safety of shipping containers bound for the United States. We also work closely to combat international drug trafficking. The Consulate General's Drug Enforcement Attaché recently worked with Hong Kong Customs and Excise Department to arrest 2 Hong Kong-based individuals responsible for laundering millions of US dollars in drug money. In other areas of law enforcement, Hong Kong's Immigration Department recently provided our Customs and Border Protection Office with information that led to the arrest of child smugglers in the United States. And in yet another case, the FBI and the Hong Kong police investigated and convicted members of a financial crime enterprise in the United States with the help of large volumes of critical evidence supplied by Hong Kong's police. In yet another area, our Internal Revenue Service attaché provided a sworn statement for a Hong Kong court in support of Hong Kong police money laundering investigation. So Hong Kong's law enforcement agencies help protect Americans and keep them safe. And law enforcement, again, isn't the only area where we have important cooperation with our Hong Kong counterparts. Our cooperation extends to public health issues like pandemic disease prevention and treatment, and increasingly environmental protection, including air quality. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control highly value Hong Kong's expertise in pandemic disease research and emergency response. And right now, experts from Hong Kong's Environmental Protection Department are working with our Environmental Protection Agency on a collaborative research project on air pollution, something I think that's near and dear to everyone's heart who lives in Hong Kong. Once again, our mutual interest in these matters and close collaboration on ongoing projects helps protect both Hong Kong and the United States from terrorists, drug dealers and other criminals, pernicious bugs, and a toxic environment. In the area of education, there is also a very close relationship between the United States and Hong Kong. There are about 8,000 Hong Kong undergraduate and graduate students currently studying in American colleges and universities, making this city of 7 million people the 15th largest worldwide source of international students to the United States. Americans also have a large presence among Hong Kong's university facilities and faculties and administrations. Among them, 29 American Fulbright professors and English teaching assistants in Hong Kong this year alone, as well as 11 Hong Kong students and scholars going to the United States this year on Fulbright awards. Every year, there are about 1,000 American students studying at Hong Kong's various universities. Underpinning this all is Hong Kong's special status as a special autonomous region of the People's Republic of China, with a high degree of autonomy as stipulated by the Basic Law. We are strong supporters of one country, two systems and the Basic Law because it allows Hong Kong to maintain a legal system which binds citizens and governments alike, which is administered by an independent judiciary. We value our ties to Hong Kong because it fosters a free flow of information provided by a free press committed to giving citizens the information they need to participate in public life. We value our ties to Hong Kong because it respects individual rights, including those of protest and dissent, or just to be different from the rest of the crowd. We value our ties to Hong Kong because it advocates free markets run by fair and open rules in which any legitimate business person can pursue his or her dream. We remain committed not only to continuing this relationship, but also to expanding and deepening areas of cooperation. Freedom, competition, and individual choice are part of what makes Hong Kong such a vibrant and dynamic place, and that is why the United States needs a successful Hong Kong. Although later than many in Hong Kong may have hoped, Hong Kong now has the opportunity to grant universal suffrage for the election of chief executive in 2017 and the LegCo in 2020. We hope that all parties will work together to find an effective path to universal suffrage that can be supported by the broad majority of people in Hong Kong. Like your university, Hong Kong has long been a bridge between China and the West. We value our ties to a Hong Kong that is part of a prosperous, stable, and confident China, and which contributes to its country and the world by continuing to be a leading light in economic freedoms, civil liberties, and respect for human rights. We value our ties to a Hong Kong that continues to adapt and respond to changes, a Hong Kong whose government is based on freely elected representatives. While we wait for the new U.S. administration to take office on January 20th, rest assured that there is a broad, long-standing, bipartisan consensus in Washington on the value of our relationship with Hong Kong. Make no mistake, your continued success is important to the United States of America. Thank you very much.
Mr. Donovan has kindly agreed to take some questions from the audience. I'll now invite Professor Lau to come and conduct the question and answer session.
Thank you. Let us all give Consul General Donovan another big hand. The floor is now open for questions. Ground rules are simple. Use the mic and identify yourself, and then you can ask the question. But please make the question concise. All right, now it is open.
And I'll try and make sure my answers are concise too.
Okay, the gentleman over there.
Mr. Donovan, I'm a graduate student of the Chinese University in History, born and bred in Hong Kong, although my two children are presently working on Wall Street. Fingers crossed, still are.
I think I know what your question will be then.
Really, I understand in Hong Kong, most diplomats are very, they don't speak out so much about how Hong Kong should behave or do. My question is about Hong Kong's direction. Maybe not from your diplomatic circle, but maybe from an academic point of view, in view of all the challenges that Hong Kong faces now, the financial crisis, the unemployment in the Pearl River Delta, what wise words you can give us for Hong Kong to meet the challenges in the next few years and for us to go forward? Thank you.
Okay. Well, first of all, let me say or reiterate that I think that we're all facing a very unprecedented challenge. It is a very complex one. We're all in this together, and it's going to be, for the United States side, we've already taken some steps to try and restore confidence, restore liquidity in the markets, to move forward also in consumer confidence and consumer spending. But I think it's important to remember that we're all in this together, and the best way to get out of it is to get out of it together. I think Hong Kong has a number of very important strengths in this area. First of all, last weekend there was a very important meeting of the G20 leaders to discuss this issue. And as part of China's delegation, there were Joseph Yam and John Chang from Hong Kong participated in this meeting. And I think that's recognition of the fact that Hong Kong has very unique expertise in dealing with financial matters. As a global financial and logistics hub, Hong Kong has experienced many challenges in the past. Just since 1997, Hong Kong has overcome the Asian financial crisis, and SARS. Now it's faced with this. Throughout all of those crises, though, I think that the distinguishing part or the distinguishing factor of Hong Kong has been the dynamic nature of its people, and the fact that the Hong Kong people are able to move quickly and skillfully to confront these challenges. And I think that that is still the strength that Hong Kong will deal with to overcome the latest global challenge. Now, at the same time, it's going to take time. This is not going to be something that's going to be over in a matter of months. We're facing a very, very difficult time. We're facing it together. I think another thing that's very important in all this, and I'm encouraged by the meeting of the G20 leaders last week, that one of the key things that they did is that they reiterated the importance of support for free and open markets, for improving regulatory capacity, certainly, but also saying that we want to move ahead with growth. We don't want to take steps in the direction of protectionism, and I think that's the right way to go. And these are all certainly fundamental characteristics of Hong Kong and strengths of Hong Kong, and I think that bodes well for the future.
Gentleman over here, please.
I'm Tim Summers. I'm a PhD student in this university.
Maybe I should be asking you questions then.
Only just started. Some people have suggested this financial crisis marks a shift in geopolitical power away from the US. This is a relative shift towards Asia, countries like China in particular. Do you agree with that analysis? And if so, is a rising China a threat or an opportunity for the United States of America? Thank you.
There's an old American saying that when you're up to your neck in alligators, you don't worry about draining the swamp. So what that means is when you're faced with a crisis, the most important thing is to work to get out of that crisis. And it's a little bit more difficult for me to see the long term. But I think certainly with regard to the second half of your question, I think the United States recognizes that the rise of China, China's growing economic power, presents a number of very profound opportunities. And certainly if you look back for the last 6 to 7 years, we have worked very, very strongly to try and incorporate more fully China into the global economic and global trading systems, and to make China a real stakeholder in these systems. And I think certainly China is acted in that direction. I'm confident that that is the direction that we'll go in. Of course, we have our differences with China, and where we do have them, we acknowledge them quite frankly. But I think the direction that China is going, if you take a number of steps back and look to where China was 30 years ago, certainly we're all better for where China is today. And I would dare say China is better as well, but certainly the United States is better for where China is today than where it was 30 to 40 years ago. And so I see it much more as opportunities.
Next question.
My old friend.
Please.
Mr. Consul General, I'm Morton Holbrook from United International College in Zhuhai in China. And my question is, after 9/11, U.S. government visa policy priorities shifted to security first, for understandable reasons, although we continue to issue a lot of student visas. I'm wondering if with the new administration coming, there might be some steps that you or the consulate could recommend for the new administration to take consistent with U.S. security to assure international students that they're welcome in American educational institutions.
It's a good question. I think what I would say on this, just several days ago, the United States announced an expansion of our visa waiver program that will make it easier for citizens from some countries to visit the United States for 90 days. This doesn't apply to students per se, but it does show that I think the United States is again moving in the direction of certainly welcoming people to come to the United States. I'd contend that we never really stopped, although certainly after 9/11 there's a well-founded interest in security. The more important thing, I think, for those of us here in Hong Kong and Macau is the fact that we work very hard here at the consulate to facilitate travel from particularly citizens from Hong Kong to the United States. For instance, if you wanted to, if you needed to apply for a visa interview tomorrow, or to, let me see, today's Wednesday night, we're closed. If you wanted to apply for a visa interview on Friday, you could call up right now and get that interview for Friday right now. There's a one-day wait to get your interview. The overwhelming number of applicants that come in, well over 95%, are approved. And I would dare say that the number for students applying is even higher than that. If you were applying for a business or a tourist visa, you would get a multiple entry visa for 10 years. At the same time, we are going to continue to work to improve our service and to make it more welcoming to citizens from Hong Kong. So from my little part of the world, in terms of our Consulate General, I think that we're doing a pretty good job of welcoming Hong Kong citizens to the United States, and we're going to continue to do that. Thanks.
Thank you. Next question. Yes, please, Terence.
I'm Terence Chen. I'm the bursar of the university. The new president-elect, Obama, is going to take over in 3 months' time. He's always been talking about change. What change do you think he will bring about to the diplomatic relationship with China? And many people have commented on his relatively inexperience. Do you think it's going to be a change for the better or change for the worse?
Thank you for this invitation to commit career suicide. Obviously, for President-elect Obama right now, I think we have to wait until the inauguration on January 20th to see what direction that his administration will be going in. At the same time, though, I would just point out a number of things that I think are very encouraging signs. First of all, President-elect Obama's advisors on Asia policy are probably well known to many of you here in the room. One of them is a former Deputy Principal Officer at our Consulate General, Mr. Jeffrey Bader, who was here a number of years ago. Which I might add is another reason, please be nice to Chris Merritt, our current deputy here, because perhaps in a few years he'll be an Asian advisor to a new American president. But that's one thing, that President-elect Obama's Asian advisors are very experienced in Asia, and they have a very good understanding not only of Hong Kong, but I think of China and the region as well. That's very good. The other thing is that Asia and our China policy did not figure predominantly in the campaign. And I think that points to continuity, and it points to a number of very consistent American interests that we have in the region with Hong Kong and also with China. And I'm encouraged by that. And I think that, so I think certainly there's, when President-elect Obama was talking about change, he meant it, and he meant it in a number of areas. But I think when we look at our relations here in Hong Kong in particular, the trend line is more towards consistency and continuity.
Yes, please.
Mrs. Consul General, it's Jonathan. I want to ask a question. Since the war against Saddam Hussein, the United States has very, very bad image in Asia, of course, in the whole world, but also including China and among some Hong Kong people. I mean, what steps you would take, or the consulate would take to improve the image of your country?
No, that's a very good question, I think. The first thing I think we need to do is we need to listen to our friends. The second thing I think we need to do is to have a little bit of humility. I think what you've seen in this region in the past few years, though, even under President Bush, is a number of things that we've tried to do to act multilaterally. And a good example of this, I think, is the six-party process with regards to North Korea, that this is not something that we have tried to do unilaterally. This is something that we've tried to have all of the major stakeholders, whether it be China, Russia, South Korea, or Japan, North Korea, and the United States, to be involved in searching for the solution to a very difficult, vexing problem, and it's proven to be a very difficult process. But I think the concept of acting and working multilaterally is one of the real keys to recovering what you said. But the other part of it is to listen to our friends and to be a little bit more humble.
Yes, next question. Yes, please.
Adam?
I'm Adam Tertak, Consul General of Hungary, and you are not just covering Hong Kong, but as well Macau. And in this financial turmoil, we see that there are certain problems in the gambling business where U.S. heavily invested in Macau. And in the last 4 or 5 years, the involvement of the U.S. investment there generated that the per capita GDP has grown higher than, for instance, Hong Kong. But we have seen that from the middle of the year, China has stringent some of the travel allowances, which means that the investment that wasn't probably calculated, so that's, and you could see that that's seriously influenced the share prices as well as now you can see the chip sales are coming down. Does your consulate or the United States somehow send a message that this is affecting the serious investment what has been done? On the other side, of course, that we have seen that SENS has stopped 4 projects, which means that 4,000 Hong Kong workers from the construction business is now out and will be sent home.
Thanks, Adam. Obviously, I've seen all the reports that the Las Vegas Sands Corporation has stopped, or at least temporarily, some of its very ambitious expansion plans in Macau. In terms of the details of that, you'd have to ask the Las Vegas Sands Corporation about it. But I think as a principle, the American investment in Macau, which really amounts to tens of billions of US dollars, has been a driving force in Macau's very dramatic and very positive development over the past several years. Certainly, we hope that American investors will continue to be successful in Macau, and certainly acknowledge that there are a number of obstacles to doing that, including the fact that we're all experiencing a global economic turndown right now. So the key is to be able to survive now so that you can live and profit in a better time. Okay.
Gentlemen.
My name is Reza Hushman. I'm a professor of economics at City University of Hong Kong. Earlier, in response to a question from a gentleman with respect to China and its position in the world politically and economically, you indicated that there are some differences that also exist between, in terms of policy. I would like to hear what those differences are and what would be your recommendation to the new president-elect on how to solve some of those differences.
I think I better keep any recommendations to the new president-elect's advisors to myself on that. But I think that certainly there are a number of very well-known differences that we have, things that we work on as well on issues like human rights. On trade, of course, whenever you have a large an extensive involvement that we do on trade, there's bound to be differences as well. This is one of the reasons why both sides have worked very, very hard on our strategic dialogue to be able to air out those differences and to work for long-term solutions and to deal with them. Obviously, well, I won't put words in China's mouth. I'll let them say what they think that the differences may be between us, but I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Yes, yeah, please.
Mr. Donovan, my name's Eric Zan. I'm a student for UC Irvine in California.
How long are you here for?
I'm here for the exchange program, actually.
For how long?
Leaving end of this month.
Ah, okay.
Having a great time.
You get home for Christmas then.
Yes. My question is that given that Mr. Obama is the first African-American president that we have in the United States, and given the specific, unique situation of the crisis, what do you think are some of the challenges and in turn maybe some of the risks he's facing regarding to the confidence of the American people? Thank you.
Sure. I can only say this sort of as an amateur watching the campaign in the United States from here in Hong Kong, but certainly the financial crisis is a huge issue I think any crisis that affects the voters' pocketbooks is always going to be a very important issue. And if you look at the enormity of the issue and the challenges that we're all facing on that would probably be the biggest one. Then, of course, there's the Middle East, there's North Korea. You look around the globe, and we have a number of very tough and vexing problems. Healthcare is another one that was certainly discussed a lot in the campaign as well. So certainly the next administration really has a lot of challenges in front of it.
Yes, Parfait.
Consul General, welcome to Hong Kong.
Thank you.
I'm Alan Lee. I'm a political commentator now and a former politician in Hong Kong. You've been here 3 months, and you observe what's going on in Hong Kong. So I'd like to ask you a Hong Kong question. Donald Tsang's reputation has been on a landslide downwards. And his governance, the people, just today I saw another survey that there are more people doesn't trust him than trusting him. So the problem that you see in this 3 months, what do you think is our problem? Why Hong Kong came a long ways, and now we're facing a problem? I think if he continues the kind of administrative work that he does now, by next July 1st, I will not be surprised to see another 500,000 people on the streets. So what do you think is his problem?
My first response to you is in 2 words: 3 months. I have a lot to learn about Hong Kong politics and about Hong Kong in general, so I think I better just be very careful on anything I say on that. I'm certainly a very interested observer, and I've had a very good conversation with a number of senior Hong Kong officials since I've been here, including the chief executive, but also from the heads of all the major political parties and organizations. And I certainly appreciate their frankness and a willingness to go out and look at all of Hong Kong's problems in a context on that. But I'm not anywhere near ready to offer any sort of judgment like that.
When would you be ready?
That's a good...
Sorry.
I'm not going to say. But maybe what I should do is have a couple good long lunches with you and do a lot of listening. That might be a lot better for me to do.
Well, I just want to inform you, all the former consul generals came to my program, television program. I hope you come.
Okay. I'll come if I can interview you. How about that? I'll ask the questions.
Next question. Anybody? Yes, please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Donovan. My question is about protectionism, and you mentioned it, and I'd like if you could expound on what are the politics of protectionism in America now? Is it inevitably part of recession? Is it a democratic thing, party thing? But is Obama perhaps in a different position than previous presidents, coming from the Democratic side? And are we, in globalization terms, in a different situation now? And how would he parry the pressures for protectionism over against the need to keep it an open global system?
Again, I'm not going to speak for the president-elect on this. I'm going to let him speak for himself on this. But in my mind, when I talk about this, first and foremost in my mind is I think back to 1929 in the United States when we had our stock market crash at that point. That was bad enough, but we made it far worse by imposing very, very high punitive tariffs, the Smoot-Hawley tariffs. And I think that we have to be very careful in this current environment not to learn the wrong lessons, not to try and build or to establish barriers that we think will protect ourselves. That doesn't work. What we need to do is to recognize that this requires a global solution, and we need to work together to get out of it. And so I think that moving towards protectionism would be the wrong thing to do. Now, there is always an understandable feeling that when jobs are being lost at home, you want to do what you can to protect them. I think in the long run, we'll all be better served by working together and not falling into the trap that we fell into in 1929 or in the 1930s. And that's what I mean when I say that.
We have time for one last question. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm working as an English teaching assistant right now at Hong Kong IED. We keep hearing about the importance of maintaining the free market, and while maybe there's no rush for traditional forms of protectionism like tariffs or quotas, there could be indirect forms like subsidies to particular industries. Given China's recent decision to execute what many have called China's New Deal and massive public subsidies, is this actually an unfair intrusion in the free market and something the U.S. would not support? And if so, what about the recent U.S. bailout policy? Thank you.
I think the point really is that we're all taking really unprecedented actions to try and get ourselves out of the financial mess that we're all in right now. And that's the first line that we need to be taking of, whether or not it's working on a package to bail out or protect the assets by the AIG company, or to work on the bankruptcy issue of Lehman Brothers, or looking at the American car market, or doing what China's doing. What we have to be doing first is being very proactive and reaching out to try and resolve the situation we're in. And at that point, I think after that, we'll begin to look at some of the issues that you've raised. One thing I would mention, though, and again, the G20 meeting last weekend focused on this as well, I think that there certainly is a need to look at better regulation of financial products. How that will play out, I'm really not sure, and I don't think anyone is really sure. There's certainly a number of ideas there. But in one of the reasons that we got in trouble, not only because of the subprime issue, was because that these very complicated, complex, difficult to understand products were not being properly regulated, and regulated not only in the United States, but here in Hong Kong and elsewhere. And I think one of the things that certainly will come out of that is an effort, and I hope a successful one, to better regulate these products. And how that will play out, I'm a little unclear right now, but I think that that's a very important objective that we've got to have. Okay.
Anybody? Okay. Absolutely, the last question. Good.
I'm Jonathan, a visiting tutor in the English department.
Before you ask the question, I've got to say for both of you, I'm a former Old English teacher, so I appreciate the fact that you're asking very tough questions.
You mentioned earlier that you don't anticipate any changes in U.S. policy towards China. I was wondering if you anticipate any changes in foreign policy to other areas in the world, Iran, for instance, or North Korea.
I'm sorry, did you say Iran or Iraq? Iran. Well, Iran obviously what was an issue was discussed very extensively during the presidential debates, and I think President-elect Obama's position on that is kind of clear, that certainly he would look to create conditions in which we might be able to have a franker discussion with Iran. On North Korea, it's hard for me to say. I think the six-party process that we've been able to make some progress on that. It's been very difficult and slow, but certainly I would hope that we'll give that a chance to continue.
Thank you very, very much. Let us give the Consul General another big applause.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you both very much. It is indeed a great honor to have Mr. Donovan here with us this evening, and to show our appreciation, Professor Lau will now present a souvenir to Mr. Donovan. This souvenir is a set of 4 hand-painted snuff bottles with scenes of the Chinese University of Hong Kong. We hope that Mr. Donovan will remember us and return soon.